So I think I probably covered the introductory things there. So I think I can start it with the actual presentation. So I think just to preempt probably some of the common questions, I want to address UK eligibility. So the UK is associating to Horizon Europe, and UK entities will have associated country status. This was agreed in December 2020, but the formalization of the association has not happened yet, which I'm sure some of you may be aware of. In December 2021, the European Commission did update their Q&A regarding the UK situation, and that Q&A states that the UK is expected to become an associated country to Horizon Europe, and through that, UK entities will have virtually equivalent participation rights to those from EU member states. That, for example, includes taking part as coordinators. And in the meantime, while we are still waiting for the finalization of this association, applicants who are established in third countries, so this is kind of countries that are outside of the Horizon Europe kind of program countries, who are negotiating association to Horizon Europe, so that would include the UK, will be country. So I think that just means that UK organizations can already apply as associated country in projects. So hopefully that kind of clarifies some of it for those who who may be wondering. But yeah, we are UK entities are already able to apply with all the rights associated. And just to kind of introduce Cluster 2 briefly in the beginning, so that you kind of know the framework of what we're discussing. Cluster 2 aims relate to democratic governance and citizens' participation, safeguarding and promotion of cultural heritage, and social, economic, technological, and cultural transformations. Cluster 2 aims to mobilize multidisciplinary expertise of European social sciences and humanities, and to provide evidence-based policy options for a socially just and inclusive European recovery. This cluster will also address the unprecedented societal consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it will mobilize European social sciences and humanities research and innovation to provide evidence base for policy to help recovery and enhance resilience and responsiveness in case of future crises. So Cluster 2 has a budget of 2.28 billion euros, actually 2.28 billion euros over the total 7 years. So this 2.28 billion is actually the highest ever budget allocated in this area of kind of social sciences and humanities in a European framework program. So this really is evidence of the expected spillover of the COVID crisis into the social and cultural area and democracy. So you will see that Cluster 2 is split into destinations. So one on democracy and governance, one on cultural heritage and the cultural and creative industries, and one on social and economic transformations. Destinations is quite a good name to showcase this the kind of impact-oriented approach in this funding program, and I will kind of discuss that a bit more later on. But yeah, those destinations really convey and expected end results that projects should contribute towards. As you will see, there are many call topics open in 2022 with a combined budget of almost 300 million euros, and almost 100 research projects will be funded. These opportunities opened actually just a few days ago on the 20th of January. And the deadlines are in April, so that all the deadlines are on the 20th of April. These opportunities are challenge-led, and obviously the names of the destinations might suggest that. So there is a research challenge or several research challenges set by the European Commission that you as applicants would then propose to address. The detail about these opportunities is in the Cluster 2 work program that I've linked there. So new opportunities are always published in these documents called work programs, and these documents list the upcoming funding opportunities or call topics. So a call topic is what a single funding opportunity would be called, and a call in European language would refer to a broader kind of call area. So that would include several call topics. So I hope that makes sense. There's obviously like a call that's, includes a cluster of related call topics that are then those single funding opportunities that you would apply to. Just today, I will try not to repeat a lot of information that is available in the work program in this presentation, because yeah, as I said, it is available online, but I'll kind of try to focus around the context of these calls and call topics. But obviously, if you are interested, I would definitely recommend you to read information regarding kind of the relevant call topics in that work program. And obviously, I think I'd already mentioned that I will share these slides afterwards with anyone who's attending, so you can click through those links then. Just a few words about the application process. The applications are done online on the Funding and Tenders portal. You can see a photo on screen of what it looks like. The website kind of contains the open calls through the search funding and tenders kind of button. But you can also find a lot of other useful information on how to participate to the funding schemes, and also how to find support. So this is also where you would register as an expert to evaluate kind of proposals. So you could that's a really good way to get experience of kind of what a successful proposal looks like. So the actual submission includes two parts. So part A refers to the parts that gets entered through the submission system in the Funding and Tenders portal, and that includes basic information about the application. And part B is the narrative part. So there are 3 sections that each correspond to an evaluation criterion. And I will actually go through these in a second briefly. And the page limit is 45 or 30 pages, depending on the specific call topic that you are applying to. And I think just as a point of warning, it is better to put in the kind of time and effort that's required to write and prepare your application. I will mention that the chance of getting funding is always quite low in European funding, just to kind of manage your expectations. So it is really important to make sure that you are kind of choosing the right call to tackle from the beginning. And here are the really kind of the basics in very brief form about applying to Cluster 2. So first of all, anyone can participate in your project from anywhere in the world, unless there are specific restrictions for your topic. Legal entities in EU member states or associated countries are automatically eligible to be funded by the European Commission. And also legal entities from low and middle income countries can be funded if their country is listed in the Horizon Europe program guide, which again is linked on these slides. So Cluster 2 opportunities are collaborative, like I mentioned. So the minimum number of partners you need to be able to apply is normally 3 entities in 3 different countries. That can kind of depend slightly again on the topic that you apply to. But regarding the evaluation of proposals on the other side of the table, it depends slightly again. Depends slightly on the depending on the type of action that you're applying to. So in Cluster 2, there are 2 different types of actions. So there are projects that focus more on kind of the research element, so the research and innovation actions. And then there are projects focusing more on the kind of coordination and support of research that's being done, and these are called coordination and support actions. So calls are evaluated on excellence, impact, and implementation, and each criterion is scored from 0 to 5. General annexes include a lot of useful information, including more detail on the eligibility and admissibility conditions, and also evaluation. So if you want to find out more about anything kind of that's mentioned on this slide in a summary, you can click through again on the general annexes. And I've also linked the online manual, which is actually quite useful to walk you through the process of applying to Horizon Europe, kind of really from finding a call to then grant signature and grant management. And there are many benefits of taking part in collaborative funding, like this Cluster 2 funding, such as an opportunity to solve grant challenges, build partnerships, increase visibility, access resources, influence international standards, regulations, and research policies, and access a high funding rate. You can also benefit from a guaranteed and predictable source of funding. So we know that topics will be coming up in these broad themes for the next 6 years. And finally, UK has historically been successful in EU funding. So this next slide is a bit busy, but it does aim to show kind of the link between EU strategy and the kind of funding calls that are open. So the upper arrow kind of structure demonstrates how the European policy priorities translate into funding calls, and the lower arrow structure kind of highlights how the results that funded projects produce contribute towards the higher level kind of ambitions of the European Commission. So starting with the upper arrow, after having established the Horizon Europe regulation, the purpose of the European Horizon Europe strategic plan is to direct research and innovation efforts towards impact and towards challenges where the EU has a kind of clear added value. So in order really to build the vision of kind of the future Europe. And going from these policy priorities, the strategic plan determines the key strategic orientations where the EU can act in order to fulfill those high-level priorities. The plan also identifies expected impacts that research projects should achieve in order to meet the policy priorities. And this is translated at the level of work programs as destinations, core topics, and expected outcomes. And the second line of arrows, like I said, is kind of a simplified presentation of the Horizon Europe impact strategy. So core topics have several targets, and they are very broad. And firstly, at project level, the short-term kind of outputs or results of research include knowledge, advice, technologies, processes, data, methodologies, and others. And secondly, at destination level, outcomes deal with the use or uptake of the results, targeting short to medium term, and that is the result of kind of interactions between the producers and the users of research. And finally, at cluster level, impacts are described in the strategic plan, like I said before, and are medium to long term, consist of wider benefits for society, and those can be, for instance, social, economic, or environmental. And just to kind of talk briefly about what the kind of overarching policy priorities are. So the European Commission's priorities for 2019-2024 are a new push for European democracy, promoting our European way of life, a stronger Europe in the world, Europe fit for the digital age, an economy that works for people, and a European Green Deal. And so, yeah, most core topics in cluster 2 would be contributing towards at least one of these, even if not more. And the relevant Horizon Europe key strategic orientations, kind of going from those wider policy priorities, are as listed on the slide, promoting an open strategic autonomy and creating a resilient, inclusive, and democratic European society. The UN Sustainable Development Goals are also an important framework, and I think from kind of excuse me. From having explained this policy context, we can see how the destinations in cluster 2 are formed. So I will now go into the kind of detail of the first destination. So the first destination, democracy and governance, addresses the challenges of democratic fragility and vulnerability, declining levels of trust in democracy, and the stress on multilateral and global governance. The expected impact of projects under this destination is a reinvigorated democratic governance. And I would really recommend you to read the introduction pages to this destination if you're interested kind of for more information. So that can be found in the work program or on the specific core topic page online. But I'll also actually encourage you to reference this context and the areas that are relevant for your project when writing an application. Another important document is the European Democracy Action Plan. So one of the main objectives of the current Commission is to empower citizens and build a more resilient democracy. across the EU. And the Freedom in the World report also provides some more context around the state of global democracy. So I will briefly present the 9 currently open call topics. So I do remind you that there is a Q&A session after these next 2 slides, so please do post your questions in the Q&A as we go along. And the first topic is on AI, big data and democracy. So this is a research and innovation action, and it's expected that 3 projects will be funded. And just to mention that the link in the title will lead to the online call topic page for more information. This topic focuses on threats and opportunities of AI and big data for democracy, as well as its unregulated use, misuse and abuse. So there's a focus on the kind of protection of fundamental rights, citizens and European values, as well as on gender and discrimination. There's also a link to where you can find a description of what European values are, and the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights can also be useful. So some experimental approach in relation to the uses of AI and big data for civic engagement and democracy is expected, in addition to the kind of more normative aspects that I outlined above. And finally, the white paper on artificial intelligence will be really useful regarding the technologies and the kind of philosophical, legal and ethical elements. Topic 2 arises from the challenges of disengagement and increased digitalization. So the aim is to contribute to expanding political participation, social dialogue and civic engagement. There is an expectation to cover different scales and levels of participation, so from local to national, European and even global. And education should be included, so the key competencies section of the European education area website mentions active citizenship. And there's also an encouragement to include experimental research again. And topic 3 focuses on all types of inequalities. So the aim is to explain and tackle the long-term impact of various inequalities. So for example, you could draw on the EU's gender equality strategy, where one of the goals is for women and men to be able to equally participate in society. Children and youth are also included as future voters. And this topic also includes education. So a relevant section in the European education area focuses on inclusive education. And topic 4 actually is specifically on education and on promoting active democratic citizenship and empowerment through education. So in addition to evidence-based, there is an expectation of experimental participatory research to test educational and training tools and to demonstrate the impact. The European education area here is a really important framework. So I would encourage you to explore that page that has a lot more information that's relevant for this topic. And now the remaining 5 topics in Destination 1. So the 5th topic focuses on interrelations between extremism, mainstream politics and media. This topic has a philosophical and ethical element regarding human rights law and fundamental rights. But there's also a policy-oriented element as well to the research. So if you apply to this topic, you should explore synergies with projects that are funded through a related cluster 3 topic on online gaming culture and extremism. So in terms of how what that means in practice, that could mean outlining kind of some broad plans or goals in your proposal to collaborate and or kind of share information with kind of the funded projects. And of course, I'm aware that when you're applying, you necessarily won't know which projects are actually funded, but yeah, just I think broad plans and goals would be useful to outline. Topic 6 is on media, or the fourth pillar of democracy. The aim is to examine the political role of new and traditional media in performing key democratic functions and reaching out to all segments of society. This topic includes the option of working with cultural and creative sectors, which is great. Topic 7 focuses on the opportunities and threats of new media and new media to political behavior. The Freedom on the Net report could be interesting here to provide some context really to some of the challenges for democratic processes. Again, there is a relevant topic in cluster 3, so you should make sure that you're taking advantage of any synergies. Topic 8 tries to tackle the volatility and increased fragmentation in representative democracies. The aim is to really study the impacts of current political and social developments on European representative democracies. Your approach should be comparative, that's quite important, but also including a policy focus. So you should include citizens and civil society at all stages of the research via consultation, structured dialogue, the action research, social experimentation, or through other effective active methodologies. And in topic 9, the aim is to counteract growing global challenges, and projects are expected to transform and defend multilateralism. In this topic, a really broad approach to governance is expected, and due to the scope, all African Union member states can actually exceptionally receive funding through the Commission. And I think at this point, I'm obviously taking questions that might be coming in through the Q&A function, and I do also want to encourage everyone to keep posting questions in the Q&A.
Thanks, Annie. If we can start just briefly by referring back to what you're saying about the guarantees for Horizon Europe funding in the event that the UK doesn't associate, because we've had a few questions on that. So I think just to reassure people, if we can first talk about whether individuals from the UK can work as experts, even if the UK doesn't associate.
Yes, so actually the experts on the European system can be from anywhere in the world, so kind of the US, Australia, so anywhere. So the UK's participation in Horizon Europe doesn't affect that at all. So you're more than welcome to register as an expert on the system as a UK expert.
Okay, thank you. And just to reiterate, Jamie's just posted a link in the chat with information about the UK guarantee as well. And there's just a second question on eligibility as well, asking if UK academics should lead on applications to Pillar 2, given that we're not formally associated yet. And if the application is successful and led by a UK party, will the UK be able to sign the grant agreement, or would this need to be done instead by one of the other partners?
I think that is a really good question. And I guess it is very hard to say whether UK organisations should or should not lead projects, because obviously I do understand there's a risk element in the current climate. But I guess what I kind of would say is, considering that these cluster 2 applications are, happening in April, and the kind of relevant timeline for the kind of UK organisations to sign the grant agreement, which is, where the UK would then have to be in the association would have to be finalised, would be towards the end of the year. I would say that's, obviously I think the more time goes on, the more likely it is that we are associated. And like I was saying, the European Commission is expecting us to associate. So I wouldn't expect kind of delays that are much longer, although obviously it is quite hard to say at this moment. But what I would probably say is there are obviously other things that come into account or come into kind of play when it comes to who should coordinate a project. And obviously if it's, scientific fits and, the natural kind of brains behind the idea should always lead. So I would still probably go along with general recommendations of who should be the coordinator. And obviously there are then things that can be done, if I think the worst case scenario happens, obviously, and the UK is still not associated by the end of the year, which I would say is quite unlikely at this moment. And then obviously there are things that can be done. But again, I guess kind of having plan Bs in place would maybe not be a bad idea either. So, just having that at the back of your mind, really, that the UK, because I think, if the UK is not associated by the time of the grant agreement, the UK can't sign grant agreements. So that's obviously is a problem in terms of being a coordinator. But like I was saying, towards the end of the year, which is when grant agreements for these projects would be signed, I personally don't see a huge risk in terms of UK association not being finalised, but I obviously, I understand that there are, broader political issues at hand that, can obviously affect these outcomes. But personally, my approach would be to go with the natural coordinator with perhaps some plan Bs kind of slash, preparations at the back of your mind.
Okay, and then just one final follow-up question on that. If a UK academic is successful as a PI, apologies, my dog's in the background. If a UK academic is successful as a PI and they can't sign the grant agreement for any reason, if we don't associate, will that person be able to take the grant with them to a European Union-based university?
That is quite a technical question. I actually probably would have to take that away and maybe respond separately, just because I don't want to give any kind of wrong information. But as far as I understand, it's organizations that take part in grants, not individuals, although obviously practically it is individuals, but in Europe's mind, it is organizations that take part. But I think that's probably all that I can say at this moment, because like I said, I don't want to give any wrong information. And obviously, just to mention as well, there is a network of UK national contact point, and I do actually have a colleague specifically on kind of the legal, whose expertise is the legal and financial aspects. So I'm sure he would be able to, or I can answer this question through him more effectively.
Fantastic, thank you. And then if we go on to some kind of slightly more call-specific questions as well, can more than one individual be the co-lead researchers of the project, specifically looking at the application form for future of democracy and civic participation? Just because that sort of, it looks like that's a bit in question.
Okay, so I think in terms of the official, what has to be put into the system, there has to be one coordinator, so that can't change. But obviously, in your application, the written part, you can actually explain how your consortium is coming, is arranged, and there can be different different ways to kind of organize that. And also obviously there are projects are often organized in work packages, and obviously there will be work package leaders, so in that way there can be also different kind of scientific co-leads, I guess.
Lovely. And then another question kind of on technicalities of costings. Is it possible to support travel costs of partners from third-party countries via the budget of one of the eligible partners? So for example, if you had a Canadian collaborator on a grant, would you be able to fund them to come to a symposium in Spain via the Spanish partner's budget?
Again, that's probably quite a technical question, and again, just because I don't want to give any wrong information, I probably want to take that away and provide an answer. But maybe just what I can say is obviously anyone in the world, I think that I tried to highlight this in the presentation, but anyone in the world can take part through bringing their own funding. So for example, the Canadian partner, I think Canada does take part in Horizon Europe projects, it kind of has taken part in several times in the previous program. So I would imagine that they have some sort of system to, where Canadian research funding is put forward for, specifically taking part in Horizon Europe projects. So there's really no exclusion for Canadian partners. The only thing is that normally they would have to bring their own funding to take part. So the European Commission wouldn't fund them. And then also there are other things like subcontracting, different ways to take part in projects, and of course also things like dissemination. You could have a kind of Canadian partner who you share your results with, invite to events and stuff. But in terms of actually claiming those costs, I think I want to come back on that point.
Fantastic. And then there's been some questions around the term of experimental approaches and what that actually specifically means. Does that always mean developing and testing tools, or are there other ways for this to be evident in the application?
Oh, that's a good question again. And I think it is very open in terms of, you can suggest your own ways of doing this. And I guess I don't think it necessarily has to be tools all the time. So it could be any kind of case studies, or, trying a different system in different contexts, or, a different, like a different participatory process in different contexts. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a tool. It could be, any type of activity, I guess, in that sense. But it is very open, and maybe actually at this point I would also mention that there's obviously an opportunity for you as well to get in contact with me, and we can, if there are kind of very specific questions about specific projects, I'm more than happy to schedule one-on-one chats with people. So that's something that I want to definitely advertise as well. So I think that this may be a case where it might be better to kind of discuss one-on-one and really in terms of that specific project context.
Definitely. And then if we just ask one more and then move on to the next presentation, I'm mindful of time. So is there any guidance online on the definitions of experimental methodologies, foresight, those kinds of questions?
There might be, and that's probably, again, something that I actually what I probably will do is put together a Q&A document that I can then share with the slides as well, or maybe slightly kind of after the slides, but with everyone who has attended. So I can definitely have a look if there is anything online, and I can share that in a separate document.
Great, thank you.
So I think, yes, if we do have other kind of Q&A opportunities throughout the event. So if there's anything that we haven't answered, we can try to address that at a later point. But I think, yeah, just for time constraints, I think it'd be if Jamie could take on the destination too. So thank you, Jamie, for covering that area.
Brilliant. Morning, everybody. I think, Annie, you're controlling the slides, aren't you? Yeah. So yeah, Destination 2 is all about the cultural and creative industries and cultural heritage. I should say from the outset that for the Arts and Humanities Research Council, this is a key area of focus in terms of promoting this amongst our researchers and our research community across the UK. But that does not mean that there's not arts and humanities opportunities across the other destinations and across the other clusters. I think so be aware of that. I think that's why it's important to look across the destinations and get in touch with Annie if you've got any questions about cluster 2. But equally, I'll put in the chat the contacts, the other national contact points for the other clusters if you're interested in those opportunities across the other areas. So Destination 2, as I said, is focused on cultural heritage and the creative industries. The cultural heritage focus has a holistic definition of cultural heritage, both in terms of tangible and intangible cultural heritage, and recognises the challenges due to natural and human causes, so climate change, man-made disasters, and also recognises the need to address access to cultural resources as well, with a focus on digitisation and curation. Likewise, with the cultural and creative industries, it's the focus on the competitiveness within the European landscape, which is what this destination is about, and it's all about sort of as well thinking about European values in the sense of belonging and the shared value of these assets. The expected impacts relate to the or linked to the EU Work Plan for Culture, and they relate to the benefits associated with culture and creative industries, and the definition of those are included in the Green Paper. But again, it's all about the societal benefits and the restoration and protection of cultural heritage and increasing the competitiveness of creative and cultural industries. Annie, next slide. So there are 10 call topics for this area, which we're really happy with, and unlike last year where there was a good range last year, this time that it expands it much further in terms of the arts and humanities breadth and of the calls, so that we've got one coordination support action which is currently live, looking at languages and safeguarding endangered languages in Europe, and the aim here will be to create a website which will include best practice resources and tools which will support the preservation and development of a preservation ecosystem for European languages. Again, citizen engagement is key, and actually across all of these call topics, citizen engagement is a key expectation of the either support action or research work that is being encouraged here. Through that there'll be one funded project between 2 to 3 million euros. The second call topic currently open is a research call around Europe's cultural heritage and arts and promoting the values, or our values, at home and abroad. And here it's about developing research which will create new knowledge and action to promote Europe's culture, values and interests. And European values are defined within the Treaty on European Union. And again here it's all about broadening cooperation with cultural and creative stakeholders to address that, and it's expected that 3 projects will be funded through this. The third one is around the role of perceptions formed by traditions, values and beliefs in shaping European societies and politics in the 21st century. Again, 3 projects expected to be funded here. And again, with this one, they're actually broadening it to talk about COVID and perceptions influencing society's responses and preparedness during time of crisis, and also politics and political legitimacy in the EU, and thinking about how culture is shaped by traditions and values and beliefs within your European society. The fourth call is focused on traditional crafts, and here you can see where they're focusing on the intangible cultural heritage aspect. They expect to fund 3 projects with a focus on reproduction of traditional artifacts and traditional techniques, which embed and utilize new cutting-edge technologies. And there is an intention here that this research can identify new areas of applications and markets and bring it together, the stakeholders within this network together. And there's an expectation that it will involve both cultural and creative industries and enterprise and small and medium sized enterprise in particular, and that's strongly encouraged within the call. The fifth call topic is focused on music, and it's getting, from an arts and humanities perspective, it's really good that both languages and music is now included within this year's calls. And again, you can see how this research project, which they expect to fund 3 projects, will focus on improving the competitiveness of the music ecosystem within Europe, and it's focused on understanding and estimating the economic and social impact of the music sector. What's interesting with this, like with the roles and perceptions call topic, they actually have a focus on COVID again here, so thinking about the impact of COVID on the music sector, and also new technology and the impact of the economic impact of new streaming models. And also homemade creation. So there's some really quite interesting areas of focus within the European music ecosystem call, and obviously in the UK we've got significant strengths within this area. So it's going to be hopefully we have a lot of interest in that one in particular. Next slide, Danny. Moving on, so similar with the music ecosystem call, there's one focused on European filmmaking industry, again expecting to fund 3 research projects here, which again looking at the state of the art and the economic value and competitiveness of the European filmmaking industry. And there's an expectation here that they'll identify and pilot business models here. So again, working with the private sector and the cultural industry sector across Europe to develop policy scenarios and tools for economic recovery. And again, thinking about the UK's what's happened over the past couple of years, we've got strong expertise in this. And for example, we've got the Arts Humanities Invested Cultural Clusters Programme, Cultural Industries Programme, which again would be good to see those expertise brought to the fore here. Moving on to call number 7, that's currently live. This one's focused on the protection of artifacts and cultural goods from anthropogenic threats. Again, another 3 projects expected to be funded here of the same value, between 3 to 4 million euros. The focus here is around preventative actions and how new technology can be used to prevent and protect artifacts from man-made threats, including international trafficking and theft. This call does allow the use of Copernicus, the satellite services, to support monitoring and protection of cultural artifacts within this project, within the successful projects. And it also there's an expectation that the research projects could focus on provenance research and promoting interdisciplinary international cooperation within this. And again, if you think about the threats we've seen to cultural assets from war, if you think about in the Middle East or on black markets as well. And there's a lot of interesting opportunities here, and it builds on actually a call that was under the security cluster last year. So it'd be interesting to see how this call, how the successful projects here relates to that one. The next one, I think, was one we at AHRC are really happy to see included, and really think the UK's got strong expertise here building on the success of COP26. This call is focused on the effects of climate change and natural hazards on cultural heritage remediation. And it's about engaging with a wide variety of stakeholders, in particular young people, and working with a range of cultural and creative industry organisations here to develop innovative and sustainable ways to protect cultural heritage in light and against climate change. And again, Copernicus service can be utilised here, and there's an option to work with other European neighbourhood countries as well here. But again, from a UK perspective, we'd like to see all the momentum coming from COP26 and the amazing work that's been done over the past couple of years to have some really strong applications for this one in particular. Number 9 is focused on gaming, and again, similar to the music and film calls, this one is about the competitiveness of the gaming. Not just about the competitiveness of the gaming sector. It actually also has a focus on better understanding the cultural value of games and the role that games play within culture and society as a whole. And it wants to better understand the innovation potential and risks of games and individuals for society. So here you could see not just an arts and humanities focus, but also a social sciences opportunity here as well. And this call expects involvement from relevant stakeholders like the cultural and creative industries organizations that are developing the gaming industries across Europe. And again, like the other two competitiveness focus calls, expects that there's an input for policy making and improved practices as a result of these projects. Finally, there's the call topic focused on the new European Bauhaus and linked to the Green Deal. And this one is focused on developing and shaping a greener and fairer way of life in creative and inclusive societies through architecture, design and arts. Again, for the Arts and Humanities Research Council, it's really good to see this focus on architecture, design and arts, and the opportunity that two projects can be funded through this route. Here, through the Green Deal, there's a framework in place really that this call addresses, and is thinking about innovative architectural and design solutions for the Green Deal and their societal impact through feasibility studies. And again, if you're interested in that one, you're advised to look at that call alongside the Green Deal framework that's already been published. That's it for the 10 calls that I'm talking about, and I'm happy to answer any questions, Emma.
Thanks, Jamie. We haven't had any on this call specifically yet. So Annie, I wondered if you wanted to join us to answer a couple more general questions to give people an opportunity to put through some questions about the...
Of course, yes.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that. And obviously do put through any questions that you have specifically on Destination 2. Meanwhile, I'm answering the other questions.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. So looking at the kind of concept of synergies between different clusters across the calls, are people able to apply for different topics within the same cluster or within different clusters at the same time?
Yes, so that's completely possible. So there's no limits as to how many core topics you can apply to, whether that's within one cluster, across clusters, or even within one core topic. So you could do that. So your organization, and like I was saying before, organizations are the ones who are involved in calls from the European Commission's perspective, rather than individuals kind of on the legal a technical basis. So one organization can definitely be involved in more than one call and one more than one project in one cluster or core topic, or across Horizon Europe generally. I guess what I will say is it may seem very unlikely, but you'd have to make sure that if all of the projects that you are involved in actually were to be funded, that you'd actually have the capacity to take them all on. And obviously, I think it is obviously an unlikely scenario, but just keeping that in mind, keeping in mind your capacity as one person or kind of your team to take part. But yeah, in principle, there is no limits, or the evaluation doesn't take into account, like they don't compare and see whether one person has applied to more, and that wouldn't, affect evaluation negatively in that way.
Brilliant. And then just to follow up on that, is there any guidance again online about what synergies might look like outside of applying for different opportunities?
Again, I think that's something that I could, take away and look at. But I think in terms of, from the events that I've attended, from kind of by the European Commission and, from discussions that I've had, I think it can look, very different. Depends on obviously from the project and the topic and what the expectations are and what types of activities are, involved. But I think, I would expect that it would involve a lot of communication. So, perhaps some sort of meetings or some sort of framework or network where, you'd be in communication and, you'd share your experiences with those other projects. It could also kind of, there could be some kind of, I guess, tools or activities that you kind of co-design or where you utilize resources that have been, done in other projects. So, obviously not to duplicate resources. But on the other hand, I understand that's because I think often you wouldn't, when you're putting together your proposal, you wouldn't know the exact projects and what that will be funded, and you wouldn't know what exact, things that they are doing and the activities that they are proposing. So I think you are kind of, I guess, doing your kind of preparations in the dark in that way. But I would say that, anything that's kind of broad in terms of, your project looking to, set up those synergies where they are possible and being open to that, I think would be sufficient in most cases. So it doesn't necessarily have to be very detailed. I think it's more about kind of being open to that collaboration and perhaps setting some, very general frameworks of as to how that could happen.
Great, thank you. And then Jamie, we've had a question on the 9th funding opportunity, so games and culture shaping our society. Would this area include the development of games regarding improving local societal resilience to disasters?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That I think looking at the description, there is a more of a focus around understanding the cultural aspect of gaming. So thinking about the role in which they play in terms of the potential risk for gaming society. So that one around disaster, you could potentially do some work around that, but obviously it's not about prototyping. It's more about researching the value of either particular types of games or the impact of games on individuals and wider society.
I think I'd probably come on that just to say that I definitely agree that I think this is more kind of I think what we see in cluster 2 is often more of the theoretical work, I guess, rather than creating necessarily new products. And obviously there is another cluster on digital issues, so perhaps that could be something that you could look at as well and see if there's anything coming up there if you're more interested in the actual application and prototyping, even though obviously some of that definitely can be done in cluster 2 as well. But I guess it's whether the focus is right, I guess is another question. But what I would also highlight at this point is obviously this is a 7-year research program, so we are this is year 2 opportunities that we're looking at, so there's still 5 kind of full years of opportunities coming up. So I would definitely encourage people to also keep looking. If you don't find an exact match for your kind of idea this year, I would definitely keep this program in mind and perhaps come back maybe later this year just to see if there's anything new that's come up in your area.
Great, thank you both. And then a question on the 10th funding area, so the new European Bauhaus section, COOL. Would this include exploring fire safety issues associated with green living walls within the architectural environment?
I don't think it would actually. I think the focus more here is about the specific framework of the Green Deal itself. And as far as I'm aware, I don't think that's a key feature within that framework. So I would argue potentially not, but there is a whole team within the Commission focused on the Green Deal because it is such a large framework. So I'd say if Annie can't advise about a specific area, I think it's always worth going back to the Green Deal team as well because of the scale of the framework there. But as you can see from sort of the design solution focused here, it's focused within the Green Deal framework itself.
I would agree that it's more, the kind of focus is perhaps more on sustainability, kind of as a main focus. I guess what I would say that obviously there are case studies that to be implemented in that. So I guess you could potentially, it could be part of a wider, case study network as one case study. But yeah, and maybe, this might be a case as well where, if you do want, more information, I would be very happy to offer a one-on-one chat just to check, whether there's other opportunities available, or whether this could be something that's and also in terms of I could support in finding partners if you'd be interested in setting getting set up with a network of partners and seeing if you fit in somewhere. But yeah, I guess I would, I guess it's quite hard with kind of limited knowledge, but I would also potentially say maybe not. But yeah, again, there's a lot of other opportunities across like Jamie was saying, across Horizon Europe and across the kind of European funding programs. I want to actually address one question that I saw in the chat when I was flicking through during the break, and just about the kind of Plan B and what that might mean in terms of UK coordinators. And I think just I want to clarify that I meant that having maybe another organisation in the consortium who might have the capacity to overtake the coordinator duties just in case at any point in the implementation of the project you'd need to I guess transfer the coordinator role to another organisation. Just having having in your mind maybe who that might be, and whether there is someone else who has that capacity and maybe is happy to do that just in case. So that was what I meant with the kind of Plan B comments. But and there's other questions in the Q&A that hopefully I'll have a chance to answer at some point. But yeah, I think hopefully everyone's back. I think
Annie, can I just ask you to clarify a point on that, since you're addressing it already?
Yeah.
Should that Plan B be written into the bid?
I guess that is another good question. I guess it really it really depends on whether you think that's necessary for your project. I would say it could be addressed in the risk section possibly, but whether that's necessary, I would probably say no. I think the risk section of the proposal would be, I guess, something, it would be more in terms of the kind of actual running of the project and the research, rather than I guess because the UK role is is to be associated and I guess it is quite clearly kind of indicated in terms of what the European Commission is expecting from projects and or from from the kind of association. It's expected that that process will be finalized soon. So I guess there's not that much risk in terms of, I would perhaps just say to have that in your mind, not necessarily written down in the proposal unless you think it's very necessary for your project to do so. That's probably would be my recommendation. But I think I'll probably move on to the last section now, and then we can still address final questions in the. They've got 2 more Q&A sessions, so hopefully we can answer everything during those. But yes, just to move on to the final third destination. This kind of the challenges addressed by this destination are the ongoing societal transformations and really how to harness them for inclusivity to really, I guess, build back better from this pandemic. And yeah, really, of course, another challenge is the COVID-19 pandemic. And the expected impacts that projects contribute towards are social and economic resilience and sustainability and inclusive growth. So in addition to the destination introduction that again provides a lot more detail about those challenges and impacts, the European Pillar of Social Rights Action Plan is actually another really useful document to be aware of if you're interested in any of the core topics in this destination. So it does have ambitious targets for 2030 regarding employment, adult training, poverty and social exclusion. So really, just moving on, topic 1 focuses on the sustainability paradigm. So the kind of environmental / social sustainability versus competitive sustainability. In this topic, it actually could be quite interesting to involve STEM or natural scientists, even though it's not an eligibility criterion by any means. It's expected that projects analyze different processes of economic growth and the linkages between standard economic growth paradigm and sustainable development, and to devise possible ways forward with a novel growth framework. Projects could also include degrowth, theory, so that wouldn't be outside of scope, but obviously making sure that you're still addressing all of the other expected impacts and scope of the project. There is an expectation to cover a broad range of European countries, and also a sufficient number of non-European countries. So again, all African Union member states can actually receive funding exceptionally. And again, sufficient, that's a very, term, but I guess you can really make sure that that corresponds to the project, that the number that you choose corresponds to the project that you want to develop. Topic 2 focuses on mobility in European countries, covering both sending and receiving areas. Projects should cover brain drain and labour exploitation phenomena, and identify policies to promote rural development and sustainability and address regional inequalities. There should be comparative research across cases in the EU and associated countries. Topic 3 addresses the challenge that irregular migrants really are vulnerable and unprotected. Irregular in this context, just to explain, has been clarified as being outside of the legal channels. You should develop new knowledge on the conditions and vulnerabilities of irregular migrants, and conduct an analysis of the reliance of the economy on this irregular workforce. You should also appraise and develop policy measures and tools for irregular migration management. And by doing this, you'd be obviously enhancing EU migration governance as a whole. There are a number of actually areas of interest here, such as gender, legal frameworks, hosting societies, and the pandemic. And topic 4, again on migration, enhances EU migration policy by shedding light on the micro or individual, and the meso or the societal, family and community level drivers of migration. Again, international cooperation is expected to cover the scope fully, so really understand, both sides and the thinking processes of migrants. And again, all African Union member states can receive funding. In topic 5, projects will propose a theoretical framework to understand the formation of gendered power hierarchies. The aim is to reverse socioeconomic and cultural inequalities and to promote gender equality generally. So that would, for example, contribute towards the UN Sustainable Development Goal 5. The EU gender equality strategy is really, of course, very important. So the strategy does aim to make significant progress by 2025 towards a gender equal Europe. So I think I would expect projects to really kind of highlight the practical contributions that they are making towards that strategy. Topic 6 aims to deliver concepts and policy for inclusion and inclusiveness in the labour markets, and a reduction of employment gaps for vulnerable groups. These would be obviously people discriminated on the basis of disability and health, age, gender, language, racial or ethnic origin, sexual orientation, civil and family status, and religion. This is obviously quite a complex and comprehensive topic, but I think there's an indication that, the wider the coverage of these different vulnerable groups, the better for your project. I've listed some relevant policy regarding gender, race, and sexual orientation, and you should also involve different actors, whether that's employers, such as SMEs, civil society organizations, trade unions, educational institutions, social enterprises, family associations, and others. Again, this synergy comes up again, so there's synergies and complementarities with other projects selected under this topic, and under the topic on gender and social, economic and cultural empowerment should be maximized. So I hope it's clear how that could be done, but again, if there's any other kind of concrete questions, you can obviously put them in the Q&A regarding these synergies. Topic 7 deals with skills, which is actually a key European policy priority for recovery and the green and digital transitions. And I would say there's obviously a UK priority on this as well. So the aim is really to understand, measure and reduce skills gap and skills mismatch. A very relevant document here is the European Skills Agenda for Sustainable Competitiveness, Social Fairness and Resilience. There are actually, one or even more possible areas of intervention there that you could outline in your project. Topic 8 focuses on the living, working, social, education and health conditions of people from minority or migrant background in the EU and associated countries. You should create knowledge on the structural forms of racism and discrimination and evaluate existing policy. There's also a focus on documenting and making visible the contributions, struggles and cultural heritage of minority communities. The EU Anti-Racism Action Plan is very relevant. I can kind of link in how your project would contribute towards those goals, as well as the EU strategy on combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life. So that could be another possible area of focus. Topic 9 focuses on the drivers and the evidence base behind the EU's return and readmission policies. So you should address the public attitudes to migration in Europe and the role of return policies for regulating migration. There is an international component to this topic regarding the EU and the kind of origin and transit countries. So international cooperation, again, is strongly advised to be able to kind of comprehend the challenge fully. So really in particular with countries in Africa and or Asia and or the Middle East. And again, all EU member states are eligible for funding. And finally, topic 10 focuses on the impacts, consequences, and opportunities of a changing demographic profile of Europe. So this would take into account both aging from the kind of topic title, but also migration. And there's also an expectation to propose policy to support long, healthy life expectancy, covering ageism and age segregation, and taking a holistic approach to aging. There are really a lot of facets to this mentioned in the text. So for example, including skills, which again is one of the EU policy priorities. And this topic has actually a specific recommendation to include societal engagement. So that would be definitely something to take into account when designing your project. So I think we've still got some time for some Q&A. So I'm sure there's some questions that we could take from the beginning of the event, or if there's any specific questions about this area, please start posting them.
So we've had one through in the chat already about the synergies between topics 6 and 5, where there's a bit of an overlap. Is it possible for this to be addressed by acknowledging the focus of 6, but mentioning the significance of perhaps the labour market for 5 and how you differentiate between those two topics?
I guess, yes. So kind of, I would, definitely mentioning any kind of synergies and any overlaps, and also any kind of, areas that are different. But I would definitely also encourage to kind of propose any types of activities that you could, where you could engage the other projects that are funded during your own project life. So I would say, I would perhaps say that just mentioning how they're related and, what are the overlaps and what are the areas of difference, I would say probably is not enough. So I would really say to propose quite concrete activities. And like I was saying, it doesn't have to be, oh, we'll do this in month 6 and we'll do this, specific activity, in month 30. I think it can be still quite broad, but just saying that you've got the intention to work with them and maybe mentioning some kind of broad ways how you could do that, setting up a forum or setting up communication channels or meetings or kind of taking advantage of the synergies in the development of a specific policy report or specific tools. I would say, it doesn't have to be very specific because it's like I was saying, I don't think you'll be able to know which projects will be funded and even which projects are going in for admission in the different areas, but just making sure that, you are, I guess, enabling that activity to happen, when all of those projects are running, is I would say how I would approach it. I hope that answers the question.
Great, and if anyone has any follow-ups to any of the answers that we're providing for these questions, again, please keep posting those in the Q&A. If we then return to some of the more general questions, Annie, since we've got a few minutes, is there a maximum number of participants for each application?
In terms of eligibility criteria, there is no maximum number. In terms of being able to actually run a manageable project, I would say, considering that most of these budgets are between 2 and 3 million euros, which obviously is still a lot of money, but it's when you have I would say more than 10 partners involved, obviously the budget does kind of run out quite quickly. So I would say there's no specific maximum amount of partners to be involved, but I would say when it gets to the kind of 10 to 15 range of partners, I would say that that's where it does become less easy to manage and where the budget constraints, I guess, start coming in. Obviously there are different variations of projects, so you could have a project where there's 4 key partners who all have kind of quite a large role in the project, and then there can be projects where there's more of the kind of smaller partners involved. So then I think 10 would make sense. So if you've got 5 core partners and 5 partners who have a smaller role, I'd say 10 in that case would make sense. So I guess it's hard to say as a maximum in that sense, because projects are different. But I would say, yeah, it's when it gets to the 15-20 range of partners, I would say that that's when it does get less manageable. Just as I guess I would say.
Thank you. Is there any useful project guidance on project management in these multi-partner projects? For example, what's regarded as innovative or good practice?
Again, that's probably something that I could have a look at. I would say the online manual is good. It probably doesn't go into a lot of detail when it goes to kind of project management. So I can definitely have a look and see if there's anything that I could point you towards, and like I said, have a Q&A document at the end of this. I would, I guess maybe one thing to mention on this question is obviously the application template. I think there is a reduced importance on the kind of project management aspects. And I think that's, comes from the fact that, in the previous funding program, the European Commission noticed that a lot of the projects that, were submitting applications, they all had a very strong project management, system and structure, and that, the evaluators were reading a lot of the same, text coming from all of these applications. So a lot of that's, how to run the project, how often will meetings be happening, and all that's I think a lot of that text has been cut from the application template. So that probably, I guess, wouldn't be really an issue when it comes to the application. But obviously, when you actually come to run the project, of course, you have to have a good project management structure. And I guess it does, in European project, it does all often come from the structure of the work packages, I guess. That's, how many projects structure their meetings and their work and reporting and all that. So I guess maybe that's a brief comment I can make, but again, I will have a look and see if there's any guidance online available on this.
Great, thank you. And then there's another question around maximums with regard to the duration of projects. Someone's having some difficulty finding this information if it's in the core documents. Is it signposted somewhere online?
So there actually isn't any guidance regarding project lengths. So it can really, it really does depend. I think the Commission wants to give projects the freedom to, design their own lengths based on the work that they are proposing and, the activities that they want to, undertake. But I think I do understand that that's not very helpful if you're not starting out and you're not quite sure where to start. So I would say the average project length that we do see being kind of proposed and, funded is 3 years. So that's probably something that you could start off with. But really, I want to highlight that that's not an eligibility condition. It doesn't have to be 3 years. It could be 4, it could be 2.5, it could be 3.5, or it can be anything, but 3, I guess, would be a good average to kind of start from, and then kind of build that into your own project, and then come up with the appropriate length.
Okay, great. We've got a couple more small eligibility questions that I think we've got time for. So someone's asked if US partners could join a collaboration, which I guess comes down under which countries are eligible to be partners. Yes,
so I would say, again, generally, any organisation anywhere in the world can take part in your project. So that's not, they definitely can. I would say when it comes to partners or countries like the US and Canada that we kind of mentioned earlier, the expectation from the European Commission would be that those countries would, if they do take part in a European project, that they would bring their own national funding to cover their participation. because I think, yeah, the Commission again is kind of seeing them as, having a well-developed system in terms of research, and that they would have that funding to fund their own participation rather than the European Commission funding that part. So that's just the kind of I guess the practices in terms of including those partners. So I would say definitely yes, but obviously with the caveat that the European Commission would, I think in most cases, be quite reluctant to provide that funding. So when you do put in your application, I would definitely at least have an idea of where that funding would come from. You can always request that, the funding for those partners from the European Commission, but it is a decision that the European Commission would have to make kind of on a case-by-case basis. So whether they see that, that organization is so unique in the world that there wouldn't be an equivalent organization in Europe who could, take part in that project. And I guess it's just kind of promoting European expertise, I guess, in that sense, that, they would want to fund and strengthen European organizations in the first instance. But of course, if it is a unique organization that you do really see that they, they provide a unique contribution, you can also ask for European Commission funding for them, but with the caveat that the European Commission kind of might, decline that, and you'd have to then have a backup plan of a national funding route for those partners to be able to take part in the project.
That's great. We've still got a few questions left, but we're at 11:30, so perhaps we can come back to those if there's time in the final Q&A session.
Yeah, I think we've still got 15 minutes at the end, and obviously we do have Roberta also joining us to give a presentation. So that Q&A will be a combined effort. Hopefully there'll be questions to her as well, but we can still cover some kind of outlying questions there. I do have a few slides still. Unfortunately, we haven't completely bored of hearing my voice, but just to kind of wrap up this event before we have the case study presentation from King's College London, I wanted to just highlight some opportunities that are outside of Cluster 2. I think we have already, mentioned, Cluster 3, for example, before, but just to kind of, highlight some, if you are a social scientist or a humanist here in the audience, and you're not quite, you don't really see that your kind of expertise aligns with some of those destinations that I mentioned. There are obviously wanted to make you aware of the other opportunities that are available. So for example, Cluster 1 in health, you do have some financing kind of model opportunities, effective health interventions, effective use of data in kind of health. And just again, a lot of different opportunities, and the title link does lead you to a page that lists all of them. So if you do want to, read more into health or security or digital or climate, then that's definitely possible. But again, just to kind of pick out some interesting opportunities in security, you obviously have the opportunity in extremism, privacy and surveillance, corruption, human trafficking, forensics, and social innovations in security and citizen preparedness. And in digital, again, I think I mentioned this before, there is an opportunity in AI for human empowerment, safe internet, extended reality learning, if that's something you're interested in. And in the industry area, there's also some opportunities, kind of robotics production from a human-centered perspective, and demonstrating benefits for workers in production lines. And energy, kind of consumers and active participation, low carbon neighborhoods, low emission cultural heritage. Actually, that's very, very interesting. Might be to some of the arts and humanities colleagues. Build environments for climate adaptation. And again, I think there was a question with the about the kind of New European Bauhaus opportunity, and I think that this probably would be an area where there may be some opportunities that we could look at. And in mobility, there's kind of electric mass transport, for example. And again, you can access through the links, you can access a full list of opportunities. And one more area that's kind of in Horizon Europe, but outside of the clusters, missions are large portfolios of actions. And this is something new in Horizon Europe. So the current missions include cancer, adaptation to climate change, restore our oceans and waters, climate neutral and smart cities, and a soil deal for Europe. So recently a new work program related to these missions was published. There are actually a lot of research opportunities. with deadlines between March and September this year. So just again, some examples on the slide there. Yeah, again, you can click through to the links, and if you want to see some more information. And again, a lot of opportunities for kind of fields of social sciences and humanities. And I think New European Bauhaus was already mentioned, and just to kind of explain a bit more, this is an initiative kind of that is environmental, social and cultural, aiming to connect innovation, creativity and design to improve citizens' quality of life as a means of making the European Green Deal that Jamie mentioned a human-centered experience. So funding will be provided across different funding mechanisms, including the kind of the clusters and the missions, and we already saw probably that one opportunity in cluster 2. And again, through the links, there's more opportunities. And just to kind of final slide, to kind of summarize and also provide some kind of actions for you to take away, I guess. There's a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of resources as well where you can find more information. A good first step would be, if you are interested, is to summarize your project idea to really kind of in a one-pager that you can use to then kind of search for appropriate partners or share with the national contact point. And again, there's a lot of resources and support to help you find partners, including some financial support. And there's also a networking events on Thursday this week. So if you do want an opportunity to hear a bit more about kind of how networking works and to schedule meetings with some of the other potential applicants, please tune into that event. And applications, like I said, are done online on the Funding Intenders portal. A lot of guidance again on how to actually apply, but also don't hesitate to get in contact with me. And I think the final point that I want you to take away is that there is support available. And if you do want to apply, please reach out to me as a national contact point, and also the wider network as well is available to you. And yeah, there's also other support available from the European Commission, but I think the national contact points would be a good first place to start. And I think that's it from me. There is my email address, and again, I'll share the slides so that you can get the email address if you do want to get in touch. But I think I would now be very happy to hand over to Roberta Cominian from the King's College London. So if I think she will be sharing some really kind of interesting insights from having been part of a project like this in the past. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to actually hearing her presentation as well. Thank you.
Hi everyone. I'm gonna share some slides to talk over my experience and the project that I'm currently involved with. Just a second. And I think there's time at the end for asking questions, so I'll try and go through the slide in the next 10 minutes, and then I'll be happy to answer more detailed questions if there is anything unclear or that you want more details about. So this is the project that I'm involved with. It started in 2019, in January 2019, and is entitled Developing Inclusive and Sustainable Creative Economies. The project obviously started in 2019 and very much started operating within a COVID-free sort of environment. And actually, as we hit the sort of the go button in terms of starting doing field work and collecting data, we actually then ran into COVID-19 by February 2020 and had to move most of the research online. So maybe I can, if you have any question in relation to that, I can reply. I can answer a little bit later. So this tells us a little bit more about how the project has developed and how we put together the project. So it involves 4 universities, and again, you know, connecting to what Annie was also saying, yes, we could have had more partners. I think 4 is already quite enough, and especially when you have to coordinate meeting, finding time for each to meet, and amongst very busy academic schedules, I think having more would have been even more of a challenge. It is already a challenge with 4, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend a lot of partners because it does slow down a lot the more practical coordinating element. We also have 2 sector partners. So one is a kind of communication cultural agency, Comedia, and one is a sort of more community non-profit organization called Transale Europe. The project, just briefly, obviously trying to investigate developing inclusive and sustainable creative economy. So we take the idea of the creative economy and sort of think about barriers, think about inclusivity, think about what makes things sustainable within the creative economies. From the start, we decided to use an ecological approach, so very much to focus on cities as case study, but to talk with a range of players within city that potentially would not necessarily be always classified as the traditional creative industries of creative economy players. So we really wanted to hear more voices within that. So people excluded by the creative economy, people not able to enter the creative economy, or people sort of running alternative creative economies rather than market-led creative economies. So that's been our approach. And as I said, cities had been our focus from the start, but specifically we looked at cities that are not necessarily considered creative cities, or cities that are medium-sized, so not the major creative economy capitals of Europe, and cities that often have gone through specific different traumas or different sort of modes of development affected by policy or by regeneration, even one city in Italy affected by an earthquake. So looking at different ways in which different cities are engaging with the creative economy with that different historical background, and also trying to develop a discourse around what could be missing about what we measure around creative economies. And the idea to develop a cultural development index is one of the outcomes of the project. In terms of the way the consortia is structured, so there is a work package 2 led by the Italian team, there is a work package 4 led by the Finnish team, and alongside work package 6, which is more the communication and dissemination one, led by the external partners. At King's College, we were able to sort of allocate ourselves to 2 work packages because of the expertise we had. So my expertise specifically on higher education and creative work, and Professor Nick Wilson had expertise on cultural democracy and cultural development, so he's leading on work package 5. So in a sort of way, King's College contribution is probably a little bit bigger than other partners because we are stretching across 2 different areas topic, although obviously very highly connected. In terms, these are some advices from the project proposal stage. This is very much building on experience and thinking also of the things that have gone very well in our project and things that could potentially have gone a little bit better or could have been made clearer earlier, possibly. So previous knowledge and trust in partners is important. So while it might be common, it might be that happens to you as well. You get the email from somebody in a university in Europe saying, oh, we're thinking about this project, would you like to join in? In a sort of way, the temptation to say yes is high because obviously of the pressure to bring in funding and obviously wanting to do research, but it's also very good to really think through who the person that are doing the research are, in terms of, not just because of the investment and obviously the fact that you're investing a lot of time in a proposal and you want to make sure it's a good quality research and it's going to get funded, but also because even if you actually, it goes so smoothly and you do get the funding, if you end up working with people that you don't really agree with in their research methods or approach, or you don't necessarily trust they're going to do all the work that needs to be done, then it's going to make the project tricky. So actually, I would say, even if you get those kind of invitation or you're thinking to put together a consortium, maybe try and organize as much as possible some knowledge sharing events, even people presenting their previous research work, just to make sure you're talking the same language, because I think that's really important. And for instance, in our case, we didn't actually have that much time to do that. And I think at the first year, there was quite a lot of that, making sure we are talking about the same things, which probably could have happened earlier. And so I really think it's much better to try and do it before you apply, to the point where if you do find that you're not talking the same language and you really, are struggling to work with, to understand each other, then probably you also realize maybe it's not the best thing to put in a proposal and invest time into these. So yeah, that seems to be quite foundational and quite important. Thinking about integrating partners in the research fully, this is more about the sort of external partners, so other organizations which are not universities. Obviously, the the horizon, the European Commission really want you to work with other partners beyond the academia, whether that's private companies or other societal bodies. Obviously, what research is, what impact is, what all these terms mean is very different beyond academia. So even, you know, translating some of those within academic term, sometimes find differences across country, but I think in our project we found that a lot of difference was between sort of the external partners and the institution and the universities. So again, they themselves do some research because obviously the kind of organization they are. So they kind of wanted to do things that were very research oriented, but that, for instance, we really struggled to get on board with because we're not done as a kind of research led university would do. And especially things like, you know, for instance, asking their members to do an event or to do a survey without needing to apply for ethics. And us as a university saying, no, you know, if we want to use this data, you can do the survey, but we really need to make sure the ethics is there. And them having never done a survey with ethics approval because they're not part of that kind of research ethics environment. So this is the kind of thing. So I think partially is about division of roles. So of course, academics do research and the partners do some form of research, but not the academic research that is required. And if they do, they need to understand what are the academic standards. And similar, I think there has been issues where maybe the academics were communicating, but not fully engaging with the expert in communication. So I think it works both ways, but integrating and understanding each other again from the very beginning in terms of those expertise and those differences in which we do things is really important. Again, identify key strength. Again, this is a little bit challenging because I think when you hear a call, there is a lot of information within the call that already guides what they want from you when you apply. And there is a temptation to say, oh, they're saying they want these, so we should definitely include that we want to deliver that. But it seems always it is a temptation, but I think it doesn't lead necessarily to a strong project. So actually, I think it's really about identifying what are your own key strengths. And obviously, across the consortia, those might be different, but not be led by what they want to hear, because it's mentioned within the grant. You know, everybody wants the funding and everybody will somehow repeat those words and say they want to do that. But actually, what is much better is to say, these are what my key strengths are and what our key strengths are as a consortium. And that means positioning yourself both as an individual institution or individual academic, but also as within the consortia, as adding specific value in research and policy term, and adding that value in a very kind of even original, I would say, way. So what is it that your research can do? What is it that you do that no one else would do? So not just sort of repeating what is expected, but saying, yeah, we could do this that is expected, but actually we're expert in this other thing that will really revolutionize the way you look at that thing you want to look at. So really adding that originality also to what you're bringing into the research in the consortia and across the different partners is really important. And I think part of the reason, for instance, why we did get our funding was because specifically because of that work package 5, because I think all the other work package was very much like responding to what the call was. And work package 5 was very much saying, what if we questioned everything that we just said? What if we redefined creative economies? What if we think about things in a different way? And this work package 5 is going to do that. It's going to try and push things farther that we want to push them. And I think that really got us the funding in terms that obviously nobody else had sort of proposed that. Nobody else had proposed that you could see things differently, and we needed to explore that side as well. Again, impact pathways and partners, that again was very much what I was saying before. Somehow in the grant, the external partners, the non-academic partners were leading the impact pathways in terms of their contact with externals and obviously being much more embedded within the sector. But again, very, very important to coordinate that, because again, there is a tendency of those partners to sort of go their own way rather than necessarily building on the research and then taking it out. And partially that's because building on the research is a much more lengthy and problematic thing than simply communicating the research and taking it out. So for instance, even within our project, there's still a little bit of struggle in terms of timing. We have been pushed for time, partially because of the impact of COVID, which meant the dissemination was somehow postponed or sometimes not as emphasized as it should, because we're still partially analyzing and collecting the data. So again, the coordination with those partners is really important, and the trust and understanding between each side, you know, the more impact focused side and the more research-led side is really important. Finally, I think this is kind of my last observation, is also that obviously a lot of the grants talk about the impact of COVID, and I feel probably what the European Commission wants is more the learning from COVID rather than the impact of COVID, meaning that there is a lot of research that already tells us about what's happened with COVID, and it's more about how do we take these things forward than necessarily what COVID has done. And partially, I think that is also needs to be a reflection within the academia as a sector. So obviously, you know, COVID has impacted our project heavily in terms of the fact we had to move all the research online. It did happen. We did the same research that we proposed to do, but we didn't have a very physical contact with the case study. We couldn't visit, you know, the places we were talking about. But I feel the other thing is that they probably want a little bit more a careful consideration of resources are used with those consortia. So for instance, is travel always necessarily? I kind of feel like we moved because of COVID in an environment where we now want to select some things where face-to-face is really important and costing needs to be associated with that, but also kind of an understanding that a lot of the meetings, a lot of the things can also happen online with very little costs. So I think a kind of way in which technology needs to be acknowledged and the value it brings within grants versus face-to-face and the value it brings in specific occasions need to be discussed and considered much more carefully than they were before. So, you know, a lot of our budget was a pinpoint to face-to-face meeting, which the European Commission was very happy to be included. I'm sort of kind of thinking a lot of that budget didn't got used and got redirected to more research time or research assistance because the work was multiplying with online data collection. So I think that probably the European Commission has also probably got a more careful eye on these elements now within the proposals. And just a last slide on a more positive note, benefit of being part of these European grants and consortia are really multiple. Obviously, you're more than the sum of the parts, and for how much, you know, we're always collaborating with people in academia. I feel like the European component and discussing the different expertise and the different standpoint from different research institutions is obviously very valuable. There's a lot of learning that maybe is hidden behind the project, which is about learning about different styles of leadership and different leadership model as well, where, you know, work packages leaders have to manage things, overall consortial leaders need to manage things in different way, and how you interact and understand this leadership model is actually very interesting to reflect on. Is an opportunity to engage with new case studies, which I think from a UK university perspective, it would be hard to engage with beyond, although obviously you can still do research in Europe even without a European grant, the knowledge that you get of those different case studies, history and pathways is definitely something that you're not going to get very easily otherwise. And obviously, this last point is specifically again connected with that work package 5 idea of expanding what it was wanted even from the grant, the opportunity to influence European policies, so the opportunity to really think about, in our case, in our research project, what are inclusive and sustainable and creative economies? How can we tell the EU that actually if they want to support the creative economies, they need to make sure it includes everybody within our society, not just some sector of it. So this kind of opportunity, again, is obviously very powerful and very valuable. I'm stopping here and stop sharing the slide. And if there is any question, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Roberta. I think that was a great presentation. I think you highlighted some of the kind of the importance of, you know, proposing unique and risky and ambitious research. I think that was great to hear, and also I guess the flexibility that projects have to have in, managing the activities. I think we have some time still for some questions to be addressed.
Yes, we do. So if we start with a technical one to give Roberta a moment to gather her thoughts after that brilliant presentation. Annie, if you could speak quickly to when calls topic states whether legal entities in the Africa Union are eligible for funding, is there an expectation that those states, well, at least one of those states, should be included in the proposal to those calls?
I think that would be, I see that as an encouragement from the EU side to include African kind of partners generally in, I guess that, yeah, there isn't, the EU would like to see more African organizations included in European projects. But I would say it's not necessarily an expectation specifically. I would say it's more like a suggestion or an encouragement. But I would definitely say that you don't have to be eligible and to be able to be viewed as a successful and fundable project. But it is a suggestion, and I would definitely take that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be implemented in the way that the European Commission is suggesting. I think that actually came also from Roberta's presentation a bit, where you can look at the challenge and you can propose your own way of how you think it would be best addressed. It's not necessarily the way that the European Commission has set it out in the work programme.
Great, thank you. And then Roberta, we did have a question on proposal development and consortium building, kind of drawing on your experience. Aside from your own networks, to what degree did you use brokerage type events and partnering platforms or facilities to include partners in your consortium?
Yeah, I don't think we did include any of that. We obviously had the partners that we wanted to involve and didn't end up being involved. So we tried to, but obviously they didn't manage to jump on board. I think, again, from my experience, cold calling doesn't seem like a good option, meaning that there is a lot of risk attached with that. I think using your networks, but not necessarily involving the people in your networks within the call, but as well, so for instance, somebody from Italy contacted me to be part of a call and said, this is all about innovation and we would like you to be involved. And I said, that's very kind of you, but I don't do innovation. So I said, but actually there's this other university and one or two people that do this, and I introduced them. So I kind of feel like try and use your networks even beyond, what it is in the call. So if you worked with somebody on another project and you can't involve them for any reason, or they're not the expert, but they are in the country, they know the field in their own country, you have a chat with them and say, we want to work on this area. Do you know anybody in your country you worked with to work in that area that could be interesting to involve? So I think, as I say, using the networks beyond involving just the people that's not going to probably lead anywhere interesting and innovative, but still building on that resources that you have and use them as broker, I think seems to be a better way.
Thank you. And then kind of to build on that, if you are sort of approaching someone for a proposal, at what point would you suggest kind of limiting how much you're disclosing to that person? So how much do you disclose to a potential partner if it's not certain that they're going to be part of the project? Should you be asking for an NDA at any point? And Annie might want to come in on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, Annie might have more a technical answer. I would say that in terms, if you have that one pager with some ideas, some key points that you want to share, it wouldn't be too problematic. The other point is that you have to consider, I would say the first question is probably to ask them, are you still already thinking about this? Are you involved in other consortia? If the person said, no, I've not even considered it, that is much safer to send them something, because they're not going to be going and developing this with somebody else. If they say, oh yeah, I'm already in talk with somebody, then maybe I would be a little bit more cautious. And you say, oh, okay, could you have a conversation? Is that something you're definitely going to do? Is that something where we could jump on board? So I think it depends also on who's the partner you're talking with and how potentially central or key they are on this topic. Because again, I'm assuming that if it is somebody slightly smaller, slightly on the boundaries, I think there are probably very little risk because they are not going to be center of a consortia themselves. However, if something that is the European expert on that topic, chances are he has received a proposal or he's leading one. She's leading one themselves. So you have at that point to be a little bit more cautious.
I think Roberta really actually covered the main points. I guess what I will just highlight is that there is actually a template on the European IP help desk. So they do have an NDA template which can be useful. So I can definitely incorporate that into you know, the documentation that I sent to all of you participants after the event.
Great, thank you both. And then if we just ask one final question for Roberta, how long did it take to write the application, including finding partners? And to what extent did your partners co-write the application as well?
Well, we weren't leading partners. We were the leading partner was the Finnish University, Turku. We actually didn't take that long, but that's because the Finnish partners were very organized. So they kind of got in touch with me by the time that sort of they were already in talk with others, and they allowed us at King's College to have quite a strong voice within the application, because they really saw us as expert. Although obviously they were expert on entrepreneurship, the call was on creative industry, so they were very modest in that respect, that actually recognizes, obviously we're bringing this to the grant, but you are the expert in creative industry. We haven't done much work on that. So they gave us a lot of space to actually say what we wanted to do, what we thought was interesting to do. And they did put a lot of effort in terms of writing the grant. So I think they had funding, I'm not sure, but within the department, they had the capacity for PhD, postdoc to help write the literature review, to help establish the bigger framework of the grant, where we contributed more to, this is what we're doing methodology-wise, this is what we're doing research question-wise. So it was in that respect, yeah, I would say a lot of the work came from them as leading partners, and that was partially as well also on the management and finance. They were very on top of everything for us. So I would recommend the Finnish part.
Thank you so much. I think you know, we are coming up, you know, it's still 12:01 now, so I think we will be you know, closing the session. I did just, you know, want to address one final question in the Q&A, and it is whether, you know, or, you know, whether it would be suggested to develop it with a PI at a European partner institution. And I would say, you know, at this moment, I guess it is clear that it's certainly the less risky option. But I would also say that, like I was saying before, you know, with the association timelines and, you know, kind of these cost to 2022 opportunities grant agreements being signed later in the year, I would expect, you know, that there wouldn't be such an issue. So I would definitely say if there is a clear natural role for UK to coordinate, I wouldn't discourage anyone at the moment from doing that. But like I was saying, perhaps identifying an alternative partner in your consortium who potentially could take over the coordination if necessary, I would say, you know, might be a good opportunity. And I'm sure, you know, Robert also has, you know, I guess experience of, you know, these types of concerns and problems in the European community as well. But yeah, certainly I wouldn't discourage anyone from, you know, the ambition of, you know, leading a proposal just because of the current situation, which I hope will be resolved soon.